With prismatic evolutions coming out, you've probably heard about the demon that is known as Budew, the Pokemon who can unlock you all for doing nothing. But there's one issue, is that it takes 30 hits for one Budew to kill another Budew. So what if we fix that? Using the Skeledirge from, I want to say, Paradox Rift, we can discard a Fire Energy from our hand to bump up the damage of all our Pokemon by 60 more for that turn. This will allow us to use Budew to swing for 70 damage, knocking out basic Pokemon like Dreepy, Charmander, and of course opposing Budew, all while still holding up that item lock. I think this deck is really fun, actually. I'm not entirely sold on its competitive viability, but the fact that you can turn your item lock into real damage and take prizes with it is pretty good. And even Skeledirge himself is not a bad attacker. He does require you to upkeep an energy every turn, and he does require 2 energies himself, but he can swing for 220 pretty reliably, and if you happen to have another Skeledirge set up, you can also swing for 280. We're running a couple other guys in here, like the double Tatsugiri, and a boatload of supporters. It might be a little bit overkill, and this deck might be a little bit bad, but honestly, it was kind of shockingly how well it was able to put up with the decks it's facing against. I hope you guys enjoy the games, and make sure to leave a like, subscribe, comment down below, all that jazz. Anyways, I'll see you guys. Alrighty, game started. I wasn't sure if I wanted to include this game because it does include some misplays, but this was the very first game I played with the deck. I felt like it was a very good example of me learning the deck and the types of things I could do, plus something that I honestly was kind of embarrassed about by the end, but we'll get there when we get there. Anyways, we do start the Budew, and every time I check player logs because I'm always looking away when these matches start. I see my opponent go second, which isn't that great. I was pretty much always going to start Budew, but it does make me consider what I want to put into the active and whatnot. I'm just going to go ahead and retreat in Tatsugiri and try to draw a card here and get some value out while I still can. And there isn't much else to do. I could have considered attaching this energy to the Skeledirge, but I don't think at this point I really figured out that Skeledirge himself is actually a decent attacker. And so I go ahead and throw Tatsugiri up. I think there's a reason to not put the Tatsu up, but I kind of like having the Budew to stall for an extra turn down the line. But yeah, this is just generally a scut position. But I think one thing that's also kind of okay here is I know my opponent's going to overcommit pretty heavily to the Iron Hands just because it's the thing that most players are going to do. So if he does miss this attack here, then there's a chance that I get to go home pretty safely as the second E-Gen completely whiffs. It's not a great position, but I was just sort of playing to my odds, where I'd rather dig for the extra supporter now, and then also have a higher chance of hitting something next turn, because otherwise, if I don't do that, I don't think I win the game, if, all of this makes sense to you. My opponent is going to go ahead and immediately pull his Forest Seal Stone. I don't know what he ends up grabbing here. I guess it'll probably be maybe just Super Box. It makes sense. Get rid of a bunch of trash in his hand. And yeah, this is kind of one of those matches that's a little bit scary, because even if you output your damage 70 or optimistically 130, which you can't do with double Skeledirge, it's still not enough to stop Iron Hand, so you have to find another alternative way to knock it out. Thankfully, it doesn't seem like my opponent has a lot going on their side of the field. Sure, they have a lot of lightning Pokemon, but they don't have much else to go off of here, and so it just goes back over to my turn. I draw an energy, which is not that great, and I get a large selection of supporters here. I believe I end up just going for rescue board. I don't even know what item I grab here normally. I think I'm close to grabbing the Nest Ball, so I can go for Fezandipiti on the following turn, and that would help me out. I end up just taking the Rare Candy instead, which is understandable. I can get some damage out and put my opponent under item lock. So even if they have a lightning energy in their hand, they are just forced to retreat. They still can't take 2 prizes off my Budew, and that gives me another chance maybe boss something up next turn, or grab a different supporter off the Tatsugiri. So I feel like I'm in a decent position with my item lock up and doing some serious damage, as my opponent is going to try their best to get out of the situation. Thankfully, no matter what they grab here, they can't get themselves out because of the Forest Seal Stone that's attached to the Raikou as well. That prevents them from attaching the rescue board, as well as being item locked, so Switch or Prime Catcher wouldn't work. Unfortunately, they do have just enough to attack and get out of there. They were only taking 1 prize, which I am thankful for, but now I'm trying to figure out what to do. I'm thinking about like maybe bossing up the other the other Iron Hands because it can't really do much in this position. But I end up just going ahead and grab a bunch of Budews, grab another Fuecoco, and try to get myself a little bit extra setup here. I also go ahead and just do some extra damage with my Budew here with the Skeledirge. That way, I'm setting myself up to knock it out with the Skeledirge next turn, which I think is going to be my line for the rest of the play, or for the rest of the game. So if I bring this down to or if I bring this hand down to 3 cards after he takes a double prize knockout, and he doesn't have any energies in play, that's a good thing. Unfortunately, he does have a Magneton, but I believe he pops this a little bit too early. I'm not exactly sure what his intended goal with popping this is, or why he felt the need to do it now, but he does charge a bunch of energies onto the Raichu. I think maybe he's just not expecting to lose this, lose the Iron Hands next turn, if that's not a bunch of energies in play, or he's just I'm not sure. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead, and now that the Budew's kind of done its damage, I can go ahead, trim my opponent's hand down. I really do need to hit another energy here, which is a little scuffed, but thankfully I have the Fez in order to draw. I'm gonna go ahead and take out a supporter from my deck first with the Tatsugiri. That way my Fez has a higher chance of drawing into an effect that could help me out. Unfortunately, I don't really see... Oh, yeah, I also let my opponent pump a card. I don't really see a way of me getting another, thing in my hand right now, so I'm just gonna go ahead and, counter catcher up this guy right here, so I can lower him into Skeletor's range, while at the same time I'm blocking him. And because he's popped his Magneton, he's a little bit stricter resources. I don't expect him to get out of this situation very easily, unless if he plays a Future Booster Energy, which I don't see a lot of variety on lists doing. This play is kinda okay for me, just because it saves me a lot of time, right? This is one of the strengths of Budew, is just being able to halt the opponent's game plan by a lot. And it also has free retreat, so it's pretty non-committal to go into it, unless if you're having a hard time switching in. And now I'm able to just start blasting. My prize mapping here is not that great, because I haven't taken any prizes of my own, leaving only the... what's it called? I can't remember his name. Only the Magneton that my opponent gave me, but alas. And then also here, it looks like the opponent is going to blow up all their energy on the side of the field with Raichu, and that could be a little sketchy for me, just because it means that I've lost my Skeledirge that I'd already committed to energy to, and I'd have to find just a completely different way of navigating for the rest of my prizes. That said, my opponent is pretty out of gas here. They've played most of their electric generators, they've used their Magneton, and now they only have a bunch of manual attachments, which will be a lot harder, especially under the item block I'm going to have to put them back under. So I go into Tatsugiri once again, just trying to look for any supporter because it will give me an extra draw. I think I'm trying to figure out how to trim down my hand specifically. Yeah, I don't need this Buddy Poffin anymore, so I'll just grab the last Fire Energy out of the deck. It'll just make the Tatsugiri hit more consistently, it'll make the Fez draw into more relevant things, all the important stuff here. And I can also, possibly just start setting up another Skeledirge. I mean, it's pretty unlikely at this point, but I may need to do that extra damage. I also go ahead and just pop the fire damage now, so my opponent plays an Iono, then I don't want that energy in my deck. I believe I played both my Earthen Vessels already, and it means I don't have to actually play an energy with my Skeledirge next turn to get the knockout on this guy. And this guy's kind of my priority currently, just because he is the the scariest thing on the field that can just knock anything out. And then here, I'm just gonna go ahead and Arven. I do really want to Iono, but I can't really afford not to take the knockout here, especially all of these energies in play. Because if I don't take that knockout, then he could just easily boss something else up, or just kill the thing in the act of, obviously. I go ahead and take my 2 prizes here, and thankfully everything on his side of the field should die to Skeledirge. And Skeledirge is really cool text on him that says his attack ignores all effects on your opponent, so it's Shred, for example. So, even if there's a Mimikyu or something, this Skeledirge would be able to get past it. And so, he also Iron Bundles me. I go ahead and safely go to my Fezandipiti because he doesn't have anything immediately that can attack it, and I have a jet in my hand, I can Arven Reverse Switch, all this other stuff. I just go ahead and use the jet, and I pop my, attack, and I go for the knockout. Which is what I would have said if I, knew about this. So Skeledirge says he ignores all effects on the opponent's Pokemon and does damage. But is Resolute Heart Pikachu EX's ability not that? Like, it's so stupid and absurd. I thought for sure it would bypass that ability. I had the boss in my hand. I could have easily won this turn, right? like I'm just losing my mind here because I have no clue. Like, oh no, did I just lose? Like, that, it just drove me crazy. It drove me insane to know that doesn't kill or that doesn't work that way. In fact, this could even just be a live bug. I still don't know how that works. I figured anything like Shred would just bypass Pikachu's ability, but I could definitely see myself being wrong. Anyways, out of pure spite, I just bossed the Pikachu back up and knock it out. But still, I could have won this game, but we learned something. Shred does not beat Pikachu EX, I think. Maybe that's the lesson we've learned. Anyways, we got 4 more games going on, and thankfully, I kind of know what I'm doing now. I realized that this deck isn't just, oh, you're going to power Budew a bunch, it's going to be really funny, but you actually, use the Budew to transfer into the Skeledirge, and the fact that Budew's damage can be racked up allows you to contend in the early game with a 1-prizer, and then move into a big bulkier guy in the late game with a 2-prizer, who, is also huge. So, I am pretty thankful for that. Here, I also see that my opponent was playing against Charizard, and I was kind of hoping to, hit a funny clip where, do a cajillion damage. So we'll just have to see. But honestly, if they are playing Rare Candy still, and not well, I see the TMBiva here, which is still slow, but it could be rough for them. I also go ahead and just immediately grab the Charizard EX, which means that it's telling me that they might just have Rare Candy in their hand. So of course, I'm just gonna go ahead and immediately pull the trigger and get these Budews out. I also said double Fuecoco. I'm not entirely sure if that's correct, because my opponent could have. Let's go. My opponent can knock out my Budew here with the second Fire Energy. So I think grabbing a Fez is actually not an awful idea because I'll still have more time to set up a second Skeledirge later, and I might not even need 2 Skeledirges in this matchup. But if my opponent has to take this Budew out. Oh, and they just Iono me getting rid of that Charizard EX they have in their hand. Probably because they're item blocked. But yeah, if my opponent knocks out the Budew here, then it could have been nice to get 3 cards off of the Fez. Turns out, I will still have the opportunity to do that. Because I have been given an Ultra Ball, and I even just get Nest Ball here to simplify things even further. I also go ahead and just grab a second Budew. I kind of know I'm going to be attacking Budew for the majority of this early game, just because it doesn't... just because I can one-shot everything and continue the item lock. Here, I'm using Tatsugiri just to fish out another card. I got the boss because I figured it'd be kind of nice to, let's go. It'd be kind of nice to fish out a Charmeleon or something just in case. I also go ahead and slow evolve my Crocalor over here. I could have just left it unevolved, but when it technically improves my draws to have it out of the deck for next turn. And 2, I already have the other Skeledirge in my hand, so it's why not, right? But yeah, there's an argument to be made that I shouldn't have Ultra Ball for that stuff, just so I can Grand Tree into Skeledirge much easier. But what's said is done. I was kind of scared of my opponent bumping the stadium anyways, so it's this is good value. Opponent unfortunately goes all the way in the Charizard EX instead of just stopping at the Charmeleon, which is kind of what you have to do for the most part. And I'm just gonna go ahead, and I only have 1 energy in the retreat, so I'm thinking about energy retrieval, but I'm nah, it should be fine. My opponent can't attack it unless I use the Charizard EX here on the bench, which would still scatter the energies around too much. I was thinking about using energy retrieval to grab the energy that's in my discard, but because I only have 1 in there, I didn't want to waste it when I felt like such a precious resource. But my opponent ends up conceding anyways because they have just absolutely nothing to do and they're just in such a bad spot. This is another real game, I think. I believe. I don't remember at this point. I just go ahead and start the Tatsugiri and not to get my opponent. Oh, right. This is against the opposing Budew deck, so we really get to see what Budew's strategy is stronger compared. I go ahead and Ultra Ball, get rid of all this stuff. And I go ahead and grab the Fuecoco, hoping that my Tatsugiri will draw me some sort of out. Now that I have my full bench, I'm pretty chillin'. I wish that I was able to get something else out of the situation, and I didn't deck check, but I'm hoping that my Colress could just grab this Grand Tree, and it can also just grab a Jet Energy, and I can get moving with my Budews and stuff. That said, I do see my opponent saying Frostlass, which I'm thinking about, and I don't think this is that scary for me personally, just because my Skeledirge just have so much HP, and then between that and like the Fez, like I could go ahead and Colress my Fez when I need to. I should grab a regular Fire Energy. I think the reason why I do that specifically is so I can have it in the discard for Energy Retrieval later, and I can save my Jet. Because regardless, like, I can't attack with the boosted energy this turn. And I don't even go ahead and retreat. I think I just go ahead and, like, well, 10 damage isn't going to be that much of my opponent. The item lock could be okay, but ultimately I think I got this on lockdown, which is why I don't even go for attach and go into the Budew. So, that's my reasoning for all of that. I do let my opponent have another turn being out of item lock, but this seems to be fine. I get that go ahead and Grand Tree my other Skeledirge, thankfully, because my opponent wasn't able to respond to it. And now, I am able to use Arven, grab my rescue board, grab my Earthen Vessel. Even though I can't use the Earthen Vessel yet, we're in a good spot. And because I saved that energy, I'm actually able to take the first knockout against this Budew right here, and claim myself a prize off the card draw, which I think is kind of valuable here, because right now I don't have too much else going on, and of course being under the effects of the item block is like not that great for me. I think one interesting thing about these Frostlass decks, and most of these other like status decks in general, is that they're able to take knockouts during checkup, which bypasses Fez, which I think can be incredibly strong. But, yeah, we pull into this Energy Retrieval. I still can't use it, so I'm just gonna have the slow route. There's no supporter I can grab, I think, in my deck that would get me out of the situation, and I'd rather not have the Lumineon be a liability for me currently. I'd rather save it for when I absolutely need to, and my opponent just isn't doing a whole lot already. Though I can say this Frostlass damage is ticking up a little bit, it's quite scary. Here, thankfully, I just draw into the Fire Energy, so I'm able to just take the knockout, keep the item block up, and this is great, because it seems like my opponent's also a little bit stuck. Sure, the Frostlass is turning up, but after this turn, if they don't set up a Budew in, then I am just going to have free reign to play all my items now and get way further ahead. So yeah, my opponent's going to keep doing all of this stuff. Thankfully, I have enough energies in the discard for me to even grab stuff with my Energy Retrieval here. I also set up a second Fuecoco. I don't think that's like entirely necessary, but it's kind of nice to have. You know, if I have a Rare Candy at some point, then I'm able to do that. I also set up another energy onto my Skeledirge here, because I'm a little scared of like an Ursaluna or Radiant Charizard coming down. It's like, I'd like to be able to respond to that quickly, if possible. Yeah, and my opponent reveals the Gachikuma, the Blood Moon Ursaluna there. I was like, yeah, I knew it. I knew there was something to be worried about. And so, even though I couldn't knock it out in one hit, if I had double Skeledirge up, which I could Arven for like another Energy Retrieval, it'd be very easy to knock out. And my opponent just realizes, yeah, they're checkmate, they can't do much about it, and I am able to just move on freely. What is great about having these this Budew is the fact that it's a free pivot, so unless you're scared of like a Petroret Dog or like our Valiants, like it's a pretty safe lead. And for the most part, I don't think you're going to be covering too many of those decks. So having the Budew be a free retreat to give you like any sort of edge that you want is really nice. In my hand here, I don't think it's that great. It can lead into some cool things, but you know, I also don't see what my opponent is about until they Ultra Ball. I don't even remember what they just Ultra Ball away. I'm keeping it buck with you. But they go ahead and run draw 3. There's a Mist Energy on the Fez. I have to read the Mist Energy and be like, okay, well, my Phage should still work against it. And here, I'm just going to go ahead and grab the Arven. I can go ahead and grab my Forest Seal Stone, as well as a Buddy Poffin to try and get like more stuff set up. So I go ahead and grab my Tatsugiri and my Budew, just to have like that safety measure. And I go ahead and store my item block against my opponent. And now I'm starting to realize is that my opponent might be a control deck. As they start attaching to the Fez here, I was like, oh my goodness, what the fuck is this? I was so not ready for control to start attacking me a Fez early on But I guess this is just one way that they have to do it. They have to get their, have to get out of the item block somehow, or they can just play aggressively and tag out, my support engine before it gets up. The Burger Charm on the Fez is also extremely scary too, because well, shit, now that's out of range of a Skeledirge attack. Thankfully, I didn't grab a Colress off my Lumineon. I'm glad I grabbed the Arven, because this gives you just a little bit extra safety here with my setup. And also gives me the Forest Seal Stone to pull whatever card I need next turn. So it essentially acts as like a double Lumineon, because I was able to grab the Arven the first, and then the Forest Seal Stone is gonna grab me a Colress this time, which will thankfully allow me to get up. I'm also just terrified of my opponent's setup now. I go ahead and Nest Ball I go ahead and Nest Ball for Fez, because I'd rather just have this if my opponent is trying to play aggressive. And I also go ahead and slow evolve the Crocalor right here. Not for any particular reason, just that I really wanted to, I didn't really want to use Colress this turn. I really wanted to stop my opponent from attacking me, which is why I ended up tossing this Alecki here, because that has a hard time getting out without playing a Penny, for example. It also seems that my opponent might also be a Grand Tree enjoyer, which does make this a very interesting version of control, because it's one that's trying to beat Budew, which I could sort of tell with the Fez immediately attacking me. That said, because my opponent used the Colress, they can't grab the Penny this turn, and they're still under item block, so it's going to be really hard for them to get out of this situation. They do have a counter game though, which is very interesting, because it will allow them to attack for free without attaching energy. Or no, it won't, because I have not taken any prizes yet, and my opponent somehow has. Somehow the control player has more prizes than me. This is all about that slow build-up. Is that in the early game, they're just trying to disrupt my opponent, so they can't do much against it. But in the late game, then I'm able to fire off a bunch of attacks after chipping them down with Budew the entire game. I go ahead and trick my Forest Seal Stone here. I really just need a better supporter to go off of. I also go ahead and Nest Ball that, and I'm trying to greedily set up another Fuecoco. I really want to get 2 Skeledirge up, just in case. And I just go ahead and do a soft item, another soft edgy pollen here. I really hope my opponent can't, go to the Fez here and snipe my dude, though it'll probably be pretty unlikely. But I was kind of hoping, as he's just gonna go ahead and pull up the Fez, probably gonna aim down my Fuecoco again. But it's fine, because as long as I have one of these guys up, I think I'm in a decent situation, as he goes ahead and starts charging up the Pidgeot EX, which I think that choice is also a little bit questionable, but it might just be enough to get through the game, because he could still knock out my Tatsugiri and my Budews. Here, I'm all out of Fuecoco, so I'm just okay, I'll just grab Razard, get him out of here, let him go free, and set up for my Fez draw now. Thankfully, none of these cards actually do anything for me. The Energy Retrieval is a little sad to lose, but honestly, I didn't have enough energy, so I kind of figured all my resources would be pretty important. Here, I'm also going to go ahead and go for a regular attack. Unfortunately, because I don't knock out my opponent, they can't just Penny this, but they just play the Penny, and I want to be able to, force them to, use their supporters very, very carefully here. Which is why I'm okay, I won't overcommit my resources, but I will force the Penny out of here. I think this is still a favorable and strong position for me, because my opponent still doesn't have a lot going on here. They are going to attempt to recharge the Fez, and I believe they're going to smack me for 80, which is, it's still scary, because it does put me in Blood Moon range later down the line, but I just have to try to manage my resources a little bit more efficiently. I think one other thing that's so interesting about this matchup specifically is it feels like they're doing everything in their power to play around the Budew, but they still have to go through so many restrictions in order to still play the game. And so I think mixing and matching strong Skeledirge attacks alongside other things happening, such as the item lock and all that, is really, really hard. I go ahead and just take out the Fez right here. Because it's going to make me feel comfortable if I could take at least 2 prizes here. I need to get some cards. And drawing 2 here off the, counter catching kill Fez is nice. And if my opponent has to, do anything else, like Night Stretcher or grab it back, then I'm also kind of fine with that. But ultimately, this play is just hey, I'm going to take prizes now, I'm going to start playing aggressively. You can't outlaw me forever. as my opponent's actually going to boss me up, which is something that shocked me just a little bit as he bosses up my Fez. I wasn't entirely ready for this, as he starts manually charging up the Blood Moon Ursaluna here. And I'm still not in a great spot. I wish I was in a better spot, but I have used you know, a lot of my resources that I can, and we're still going to be playing a long battle here. I can go ahead and get rid of the Clavell to grab some more energies, and here I'm just like, well, I could go ahead and grab my Grand Tree. It's not going to be that useful. And I'm going to go ahead and just Jet Energy up the Tatsugiri, try to draw another card. I could have just gone straight into like Budew or Skeledirge, but I figured, this is probably better. I won't need the energies elsewhere. I also am going to take the chance to just take a poke with my Budew here. So inflicting Item Block here is important because it stops them from, you know, just setting up even more plays or, you know, trying to, you know, get even further ahead. And it also puts damage onto the Pidgeot. So now if I discard another energy with my Skeledirge, I can just take this out with my own Skeledirge. And that's really good just for knocking out their whole support engine in the first place. Now that the Grand Tree is gone, they can't do anything to immediately get it up. And technically under Item Block, like, it'd be very hard for them to get the Pidgeot back up. And so that's what I'm hoping for currently. Our prizes are still even, so the counter gate doesn't do much for them on the Regieleki, and it won't allow them to use the attack this turn, even if he ends up trying to retreat into it. And the Blood Moon is still really scary, but I do, like, I'm already trying to plan out a line where I could go, like, okay, I could go ahead and poke it with Budew, or I could discard energy with Charizard and attack it for knockout. You know, thankfully the Charizard does even more damage than the Skeledirge does, so it's very hard for them to find a way to bypass it. I put it as a counter gate on their Blood Moon, but thankfully, like I said, we're even on prizes. Here, I think about it for a little bit. I'm trying to figure out, like, okay, what's my best line? How do I get out of here? But ultimately, I think knocking out the Pidgeot here and then going from there is going to be my best way of progressing through the game. I also don't give my opponent any of the stadiums here. There's no reason for me to put that Grand Tree for, you know, the rest of the game, essentially. And the Artazon could maybe be okay, but like I said, it's not really doing me any favors. In fact, if my opponent were to Iono me instead, I'd actually appreciate it a little bit, just because I know that my hand doesn't really resolve or get me anywhere closer besides my own Iono. So if my opponent does that for me, there's a potential to draw a different supporter that could possibly drop me out a little bit further. Yeah, but this is just like an extremely weird match that I played. But it was interesting how my deck specifically is like almost counter, like it almost plays against the things that you don't expect Budew to do. So Budew is mostly just like a tool for you to set even greedy stuff. But the Budew doesn't usually translate to a lot of raw damage, and so the fact that we've gotten a bunch of damage out is super strong. I kind of went and used the Tatsugiri to possibly to try to like find an Arven or something, but ultimately I'm just like, nah, I don't need to. And I'm just gonna go ahead, Ultra Ball, thin out some more cards from my deck, and I'm just going for the Itchy Pollen. I'm hoping that next turn I am able to just get my way out of this situation, as he just has to run and draw. Yeah, I could go ahead, slow evolve here, Surfer, try and draw a bunch of cards, and I hit the Energy Retrieval, which is good because that allows me to just go into Charizard and take the knockout, thankfully. But, you know, I feel like the Item Block really pressured the control player there and removed a lot of their tools. So, like, one thing that they have to do very often is, like, counter catcher to, you know, stall you out as they do more disruptive things. But because of the Budew, they have to, like, go around and play differently. I don't think they expect the Budew to do as much damage as it does. Usually it's like a very passive threat, so the fact that the Skeledirge can do, you know, active enough damage that the Skeledirge can follow up after it is so strong. And then, yeah, I believe this match is just like me bullying my opponent, so I am gonna go ahead and end the commentary here. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video, or, you know, whatever the fuck I just did. I'll be posting more stuff about Prismatic as I get inspired to do so. I don't really have any, like, concrete ideas. There's like a few decks I want to cover, but in general the set doesn't have a whole lot, and the types of decks that Budew are going to make strong aren't typically the decks I like to play. But regardless, I hope you guys have a good day, and I'll see you guys around.